everyone. I'm Danielle Applegate, the Director of Veteran and Military Family Engagement at Cerner. It's great to be here in support of HillVets in the LEAD program. As an alumna myself, I've seen firsthand the power of this community and its dedication to furthering the continuation of public service on the Hill. Many thanks to Justin and Betty, as well as the participants and subject matter experts so far for gathering today and sharing your insights and experience in leading paradigm shifts in the military and veteran communities. Cerner is a proud supporter of HillVets through our passion for creating these shifts. We are very excited that for the first time ever, 3 government agencies are on the same electronic health record system. These are unprecedented times as we work towards creating a seamless, lifelong electronic health record with our partners at the Department of Defense and Department of Veteran Affairs. As a dual military brat who served in the Army and left the service due to a service-connected injury, this role is a professional opportunity, but also a very personal mission. My entire life has been comprised of jumping from one paper-based medical record to another throughout a lifetime of moving around from base to base, and then through VA to VA for my current healthcare. While we've had a very smooth rollout of our scheduling system last month in Ohio with the VA, we're actually counting down to the very first go live event for the full electronic health record at Man Grandstaff VA Medical Center in Spokane, Washington on October 23rd. Cerner believes that the user is at the heart of everything that we do, and we've put much effort into keeping our stakeholders apprised through open and transparent communications with service members, veterans, our clients, and of course, Congress. Timely and consistent program updates allow us to share all of the latest developments as we continue deploying the EHR across the country, and we rely on your feedback to continue creating a great patient experience. Keep your eyes and ears open for more exciting news to come as we further our engagement with HillVets and the military and veteran communities as we march towards modernizing public health. Stay tuned for a few minutes. The last panel is coming up soon. It's a pretty great one. Inspired to Serve, going to be moderated by Betty. So just give us a couple seconds. It's been a long, exciting day. All of the videos of the previous sessions are available online. I've been watching them populate as we've moved through this. So if you missed something or just wanted to hear me give my great intro speech again, feel free to revisit the YouTube or the Facebook channel. And actually, I think it's already up on LinkedIn to get a recap.
Yep, I was on mute for all of that. Sorry, guys. It's been a long day, and we've all been sort of chatting behind the scenes about how I don't think people realize how difficult virtual conferences are when compared to in-person conferences, but I think we're good to go now. I'm Betty Rhodes. I'm the Executive Director of HillVets. I hope you've enjoyed our content today. They had to come check on me. We're very excited about all the speakers that we've had today, but I am personally very, very pleased to be moderating this panel tonight about the convergence of national and military service. I did not serve in the military myself. I did not come from a military family, though I've been working in the veteran and military community now for about 15 years, but service to community, service to others, service to country was always instilled into me at a very young age. So this conversation is incredibly interesting to me, and I hope it will be to you. I am going to bring on our other panelists, and I'm gonna get everybody in a place where, oops, let me change some of this around. This is what happens when your producer tries to be a moderator. All right, so I am joined today by two experts in the area of national service. First, we have Shawn Skelly, and then we have John Lira. And rather than me droning on and on, I am going to let them introduce themselves, but they are both fantastic, and I can't wait to hear from them. So Shawn, why don't we start with you? Uh-oh, now I think Shawn's on mute.
Just didn't want you to feel left out.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind.
New system. I thought I'd been on everyone. Hi, everyone. Shawn Skelly. I'm a retired Navy commander. I did a little over 20 years active duty. I was a naval flight officer, flew that monstrosity behind me there, the S-3 Viking. I was a Pacific Fleet sailor for the most part. And I did also with the Love Me Wall. My last tour was attached to the Marine Corps, at the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, helping to coordinate the Marine Corps' fight against IEDs. That's what I did. After I got out, which was a while ago, I spent several years as a defense contractor working on various things, which I am again today. But eventually I found my way into the second term of the Obama administration, where I served at the Department of Defense, helping to coordinate urgent warfighter support needs across the entire department, getting the Air Force, Marine Corps, Army to all come together and make things move faster, better, into the liking of the combatant commanders. Then I finished out as the Executive Secretary of the Department of Transportation. And when leaving the administration, President Obama appointed me to the thing called the National Commission on Military, National, and Public Service, which we'll talk about a little bit tonight, which just wrapped up less than 2 weeks ago. Presently, today, probably the endeavor I'm most fond of, aside from my day job, is I helped co-found about a year and a half ago with some friends and former colleagues an organization, a nonprofit 501c3 called Out in National Security. The goal is to raise the profile of LGBTQ plus Americans who have been, currently serve in high-performing areas in national security in all sorts of different places, not just the military, but in civilian service, State Department, DHS, and all sorts of places, and to help younger Americans find their way and know that there is a place for them to serve and that they're certainly capable of it. So that's a new passion that I have. Thank you.
Wonderful. Can't wait to talk about all of that. John, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
First, I want to start by complimenting Shawn's wall in the background. It's very nice. One of the most decorative I've seen. And this old Marine's heart, like I said, makes it shine up. But yeah, my name is John Lira. I am a Marine Corps veteran. I'm a huge supporter of HillVets. I've been supporting HillVets since it was a happy hour, essentially. Happy to be here tonight, part of CAPCON, and speaking with HillVets lead protege cohort. So just happy to be back and amongst friends and family. Especially happy to be here with a friend and former colleague and an amazing kick-ass veteran, Shawn Skelly, who I've very much admire the work that she's done and the work I know she's going to continue to do. So happy to be here. Since I've been in DC the last couple of years, I've worked at a couple of agencies, the Corporation for National Community Service, which actually administers the national service programs that we'll be discussing, like AmeriCorps and Senior Corps, NCCC. Also at the Small Business Administration, Office of Veterans Business Developments, where we helped train. If you went through the Boots to Business program at any time during your transition, it was a good chance that I was running the contract that helps get those people in there to teach you. And also now I'm currently serving on the, I missed a pretty important one. After the SBA, I went to the National Commission on Military National Public Service with Shawn. And we helped, as we will discuss, help design some pretty amazing a vision for the future for America in regards to service. Currently, one of my more prouder opportunities is I am currently a HillVets Legislative Leaders Fellow in Representative Jimmy Panetta's office. So Jimmy Panetta is the congressman who ultimately introduced the Inspire to Serve Act, which we will be talking about. So happy to continue on the work of the commission and in national service in a legislative office and with HillVets. So great to be here with you, Betty and Shawn, and lead proteges.
I was going to say both of your backgrounds are top notch. You know, I know you admire each other's, but me, I mean, we've put together this little studio here at the HillVets house to try to put some webinar and video content together while we're not allowed to do things in person like we would prefer. But yeah, I need to aspire to more, I think, with what I'm looking at behind both of you today. So I'm gonna change our configuration here just a bit. I want to make sure that we first talk about Shawn. You know, you mentioned that you were appointed by President Obama to the commission. Can you start off by telling our audience who may or may not be familiar kind of how the commission came about and what your initial sort of experiences were when being asked to serve?
Thank you. So I've still to this day, after nearly 4 years of experience around the commission, use my hand and my fingers, because it's the National Commission on Military, National, and Public Service. And in a simple form, it discusses all those forms. It considered all those forms of service to the nation. But the origins of the commission actually go back to 2015 and a little before that, when then Secretary of Defense Ash Carter started the initiative to do the trial, the examination as to whether or not women can serve in those final ground combat roles that they are serving in now today. There was the study period, then it was decided and authorized, and women started to be allowed to qualify for active service in infantry, armor, artillery, special forces, those final few MOSs and specialties that had been closed after decades of increased opening of opportunity. Well, when that happened, then that kind of opened a question in some people's minds as to, should women now finally at that time be asked to or required to register for the Selective Service System, the system that collects everybody's information at this time still men, in case of a national emergency and a military draft is enacted for people to be selected from. So that question then came up in the Congress, and they deadlocked on it. And it was a very controversial one for some segments of society and some representatives and senators in Congress. So like any real sticky problem, they decided to punt, with all respect, and get somebody to look at it in some depth, because it had some brief hearings in both the Senate and the House, but it hadn't been really plumbed to a deep depth. So the commission was the idea of the late Senator John McCain and the ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Senator Jack Reed. They decided, well, we need to examine the selective service question. But as has been explained to us, there was also a long-running conversation about other forms of service to America, to include the all-volunteer force aspect of the military, national service, AmeriCorps, which just had a big rebranding day today, and Peace Corps, and then public service, federal, state, local, and tribal level. All those folks who are civilians and career people who service in so many ways, and bring those together and try and find some commonalities in it. I was vaguely aware. I was paying attention. It wasn't my job at the time, but I knew that the women registering for the draft was a question that was bouncing through Congress at the time. And then they decided to lay it off and then pass the National Defense Authorization Act. And I thought I remember reading something about the commission being formed. And then with a month to go in the Obama administration, my phone rang and they said, would you do this thing? I thought they were going to ask me to like clean windows in the White House or help move boxes or something. I don't know why they were calling me, but they asked me to be a part of what became the commission and be one of the 11 commissioners, which is, I think, one of the more unique aspects of the experience is that we were 11 appointed commissioners chosen by 9 different people. And somehow, and there was no coordination amongst them really. And somehow we got a breadth of experience with several who had served in the military, some in career, some in reserve, some decades before, combat experienced individuals. We had folks who were educators and had extensive experience with national service. And many of us had served in government in different ways. So we had different varieties of public service in our midst. So we really had a variety of experience, though we weren't especially the most diverse panel because we were pretty pale at that time, but it wasn't a design thing with 9 people appointing us all. But we came together pretty quick and really struck it out to work as a single team. There wasn't any very little sense of partisanship, except when it maybe came to a microscopic issue or two. But we really came together as a team from the outset and helped shape our mandate. And then we started hiring really great people like John to really look at the problems, because I was only a special government employee. I only worked about 5 days a month on the problem, but we had full-time staff up to 36 people for the better part of our close to 3-year mandate in that way. But the thing that impressed me most, I'll say in general, is when we finally got our act together and we had a plan, and we started to go around and talk to Americans. It really changed my life and my appreciation of what my prior service had been in uniform and what it means to serve. And to be an American was really deeply informed and shaped by the experience. I will be forever grateful for the opportunity to go around the country and talk to people from all walks of life about what it means to do something bigger than yourself.
I have to believe that must have been just so inspiring day after day. And honestly, having not known until just this moment that that the commissioners were chosen by such a large and disparate number of people, I think it makes what you all accomplished even more impressive to be able to put together that kind of a deep dive and that kind of a really meaningful and thorough reporting on these issues. Makes it all the more impressive when you all didn't, not only did you not know each other, but the people who appointed you, weren't necessarily doing things with, exactly the same sort of schema. John, so you got hired at the commission, can you talk me through a little bit of your perspective in joining on staff and kind of the early days and what you were feeling about it, what it meant to you?
Sure, absolutely. I actually received a random email from a network of former Obama appointees, and scrolling through the email, I was like, military, national, public service. I've served in the military. I've worked at CNCS, which I'm kind of knee deep in national service, and I'm already at my 3rd agency. So it was everything that I could have wished for all in one email. And I scroll down to the very end and I see Shawn Skelly's name at the bottom as a point of contact soliciting for staff. So she is, directly responsible for how my resume arrived on my boss's desk and how I ultimately came on the commission.
I'm still waiting for my kickback.
What's that?
I'm still waiting for my kickback.
Yeah, I owe you. But when I was hired, literally 7 full-time people on staff. Like Shawn said, we grew to about 36. And it was our everyday mission. I was hired to manage the national service portfolio. And, my goal in a lot of ways was to listen to everybody, as many people as we could, key stakeholders from the very bottom of the practitioners to the program managers to the state level, all the way to the federal agencies. I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to talk to the commission and express the issues that they felt they were great about national service and needed to be improved. Ultimately, we kind of focused on a framework that focused on 3 A's. Awareness. We noticed there was a huge gap in awareness in national service. Once people found out what national service was, we were able to determine that they really liked the idea of national service. They wouldn't mind increased government support and more opportunities to serve. But the first hurdle was just awareness. And then we worked on aspiration. Unlike military service, they're the same, but they're different. It's, 2 sides of the same coin. national service volunteers don't take on a physical harm kind of sacrifice to themselves physically, but they have to take on a financial insecurity. You know, they make a lower stipend, so it's not very aspirational. A lot of folks would see this not as it's more compared to a job, and they say, well, why do I want to do that for? So we had found a way to actually, like I said, with increased awareness, you know, maybe modifying the stipend a little bit and some of the, you know, the education award, some improvements to the education award, we could start to improve, you know, the average Americans, the average graduating senior, you know, the average transitioning college student. We were able to fit them in these short-term, volunteered, stipended opportunities where they can really make some huge impact in nonprofits and in community organizations in their neighborhood, you know. So that was the goal, to increase national service awareness, national service aspiration, and national service access. And, you know, I think very proud of the product. You know, the national service chapter really speaks to, you know, really pulls at the heartstrings of everybody can serve. No, not everybody has to join the military and feel like a veteran to say that they served this country, because there's hundreds of thousands of Americans in neighborhoods across the country and forests across the country. Doing the small things that are the bigger threats, you know, fighting things, you know, try to alleviate illiteracy, try to alleviate poverty, try to alleviate homelessness. And they take the same pledge as military members do, but it might not be for the same length, and it might not be for the same kind of level of mental, you know, physical commitment. But it definitely is a commitment, and they definitely share in the spirit that they've given to a greater good. So the commissioners were great. We had great commissioners like Alan Casey, who founded City Year. Other commissioners like Mark Guerin, who helped run the Peace Corps several administrations back. So really had some great knowledge to feed off of. In the national service field, they're never ashamed to ask or to tell you what the problems are or how to fix them. So it was just a great opportunity all around, and very proud of the, you know, 35 plus national service recommendations that the commissioners and the commission itself ultimately included in the final report.
So I have a follow-up question for you, John, and then I want to sort of ping the same question to Shawn. So you mentioned that, you know, when people talk to you and got into the details, you know, they were very much enthusiastic about national service, but it was an awareness issue. I guess where do you feel like that comes from? Where is the origin of this sort of unfamiliarity with service? And you know, is it an education thing? Is it is it regional? I guess what were your observations about kind of where that gap comes from and how we could address it?
That's a great question, and I'm going to tee up something perfectly for Shawn, because it was one of our kind of surprise conclusions of the whole commission. It was a finding that we weren't expected, that wasn't necessarily in our charter, but we were, at the end of it, we were thrilled that we can offer some input and some recommendations forward, and that's, you know, essentially civics education. You know, civics education and service learning. There used to be huge grant programs to support these type of programs in school and outside of school. But since 2009, and largely they've dried up, you know, so it leaves already struggling school districts with trying to get their kids out in the community to understand the value of service, or, you know, so, I mean, it's just STEM. It was the rise of STEM has come and taken over in a lot of ways, because, you know, the country recognized those critical skills, you know, as something that we need as well. So the commission pushed hard for a return to civics education. You know, not just civics as this is how you pass a bill, but, you know, getting students out, maybe high school seniors, maybe a summer of service to bridge the gap between middle school and senior year, maybe a bridge year after graduation where it's a short-term, you know, 8 or 9 month opportunity. But I think in a lot of ways, yeah, I think that's where we can have the most impact. You know, I think at the college level as well, it makes great opportunities for night students or students who have flexible schedules, or even graduating college students who haven't secured their next post-college job yet, and they need an opportunity. Maybe they need a resume builder to go work in a community, to go work, you know, take on caseloads and stuff like that. So I think it is, I think the most impact can be had in a K through 12 educational level. But I'd love to hear what Shawn has to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Shawn, to you.
Thank you. To pick up where John left off with regard to civic education, that was one that was not in our mandate and was really put in front of us by America as we traveled the country. We're talking about different levels of awareness and understanding of folks as to the opportunities and the responsibilities of serving your country and understanding your country. Voting is a civic duty and sustains the country. I said, so what's the root of that? What's the deal? And they just said, almost to a person, regardless of where, regardless of who they were and socioeconomic strata, it's education, and it's primary, middle school, and high school education. It's just not emphasized like it was when we were younger, and that includes me. It is different. We see it in the polls. We see it in the scientific polls of what people's knowledge and understanding is. We see it on things like Jimmy Kimmel, back when people would actually walk around as tourists in Los Angeles, and he would stop people with a microphone and they would ask them questions, and it would be pretty funny, but also really embarrassing as to what seemed to be a random sampling of knowledge as to where our capital was, what the branches of government are, and things of that nature. With regard to the opportunity to serve and understanding of national service, it's pretty much anything that's service or it's participatory seems to be in the same boat that we all are really aware of when it comes to military service and the all-volunteer force. The people that are most likely to do it and most likely to have serious thoughts about it, otherwise known as propensity. Have you heard about it before? And are your wheels spinning about whether that's right for you or not? Whether or not you do it, but you've actually kind of considered that math. That comes from what I would call 1 degree of separation from it. Father, mother, family member, aunt, uncle, grandmother, grandfather, maybe somebody a neighbor or neighbor's kid, whatever. Somebody has that sort of connection to military service, the likelihood that they are going to understand it a little bit more, have a personal connection as to what it involves and what you can take away from those experiences, boom, they've kind of crossed the threshold, right? With national service, that's also very much true. Problem is, national service relative to military service, and especially over time, because military service has been, we have a history of that since before America was America, or at least the United States of America. Peace Corps is only not even 60 years old yet. AmeriCorps type programs, the precursors of it have existed for several decades, but AmeriCorps and the Corporation for National Community Service, which is now AmeriCorps as of today, are only 25 years old, right?
Wow.
So, and their numbers have been relatively modest. Peace Corps, which goes back 60 years, has a really great reputation, although its top line numbers have been very small, but it has this reputation from these decades and their exploits and the stories that come back with them, and they're incredibly powerful. National service, the people who do full-time national service, is relatively small. And the majority of people who perform national service through the old corporation are predominantly seniors, helping other seniors. So that's almost segmented away from folks. So it's the issue of the long-running problem of not enough firsthand contact and examples in there, because people who do get it and do encounter folks are moved by it. When they encounter someone who's wearing a T-shirt and doing the things like, why are you doing that? Well, I'm here, I'm part of this program, this is what I'm doing for a year. We've heard those stories firsthand. All of a sudden people went, wait, you can do that and help people in the community and get a little college grant out of it and get and get a stipend for a year. I can do that and get my feet under me. And when people would encounter it, they'd pursue it. It might take them a year or two to get into a program, but they would pursue it when they saw it. And that's where the education piece becomes so vital, is we need to introduce the opportunities, not just you get it in a lesson plan in the 7th grade and again in 10th grade or something like that. You link it to, as John said, service learning. Hey, let's look at our community. Oh, there's too much trash on the roads, or the local park, the stream is dirty, or there's a homeless issue or a food insecurity issue, and kids can design programs to begin to positively affect their communities in that way and learn the power of that, which is also part of civics. So that was sort of the two sides of the coin as to our recommendations. Is we need to get it into the education so that it can be and it can be leveled across the country too, because there's a significant privilege issue that exists with national service. You have to be able to afford it.
Yes, and I think I want to come back to that, because obviously resources are at the heart of so much of this conversation. And I think back to the parts of my life where I was contemplating, different options and things that you all probably discussed in national service that I would have really liked to have done. It wasn't really feasible for me from a resource standpoint. But first, Shawn, I want to pivot a little bit to the military piece. So as part of the commission, obviously you used your fingers. It's not just national and public service; it's also military service. So what were the things? We've been talking all day about sort of paradigm shifts, challenging assumptions. Looking at different ways to make up communities. What were the things that stood out to you on the military side of the commission's work in terms of, how our armed forces can shift those paradigms, challenge those assumptions, and move past them? You specifically already mentioned, some work in relation to women serving in the armed forces, but expand on that a little bit if you would, and talk about maybe some of the more innovative things that you think our military could be doing to move in that direction.
Our mandate was, we even said it amongst ourselves, and I've said it publicly when I was the commissioner. Our mandate was it was absurdly broad. Yeah. Because the military part included, should the nation still have a requirement or a need to draft people, conscript people into service, regardless who it is? Are there reasons for that? Is the world nasty enough that you might want to retain such a thing? If yes, then who? Then how? The selective service system. What do you do? Do you change all of those things? And then also look at the all volunteer force. And is there a relationship between those two? What is the relationship between that and public service and national service? Even though they're quite distinct in some ways, but there is a connective thread through all those things that I think is one of the highlights of what we accomplished or what we discovered and we tried to convey in our final report. I also said publicly many times, no insult to John or any of the staffers that we had, but part of any good research is going out and finding the things that have already been discovered, right? You do original work, original research, but you also go out and find all the sources that you can as to who's considered these problems and these subjects before. So there's a significant component of what we recommended that isn't necessarily what I call new math. Folks have looked at all these problems before in one way or another. It was our task to put them under one roof and try and find some commonality and relevance between them all and put them into a 2020 America context. When it came to the uniformed military, we had to start our examination with that question of the draft. We came down to, yes, it's there for emergencies. The mechanism is there for emergencies. The selective service system is there to help administer the draft in that case of emergency. And the concept really loses its value if there's not a tiny, and it's a really tiny organization in being to enact it, because it's all about time in the case of a true national emergency. And then we started to look at the who, which then starts to conflate with, well, what Americans are serving in the military right now in a volunteer fashion, and how does that inform folks that you might want to conscript in a dire national emergency as decided upon by Congress and a president? And we looked at the role of women in the military. We looked at the role of the diverse nature of the military, who serves and why, to look at, well, if we're doing it this way today, is basically what our calculus came down to. In my words, women are increasingly approaching 20% of the armed forces. Officers a little higher, enlisted catching and the number of specialties are increasing as they have been for decades in that way. And without even considering the issue of whether or not women should be in combat positions, because in the entire armed forces of all the MOSs, specialties, ratings, all that jazz, whatever you call it, only a little over 30% are those direct ground combat roles. The other 70% are what we know is the rest of the spear. We always talk about the tip of the spear, right? Tip of the spear is no good without intel, logistics, aviation. Everything the Air Force and the Navy does is almost entirely without question. All of those things, all of those functions are what makes communications, everything, space, all of it makes the military whole. And that is represented by people who are men, women, and from all across the country. So that led us to look at why don't you conscript, or why don't you consider registering women as well? Because all these functions are vital. And actually the legislation that creates the draft says to sustain the force. A court case in 1980 injected the words combat replacements, but that's never the intended legislation of the thing. The draft was used over history to create the forces and to keep making them whole, and never to respond to just a particular incident or combat loss or campaign. It was always part of a larger strategic question as to the size of the force in that way. So the question got a little skewed for a couple of decades as to what is it exactly for. And we all know now that what we consider modern combat, or what is expected to be, requires everything we know how to do and everything that makes up a military force. Decades ago, I learned the aphorism, amateurs talk tactics, professionals study logistics, right? It's cool to kick doors and fly fighter planes and stuff, or whatever it is, the stuff that's on the video games. It's the stuff that's not in the video games that makes all of that other stuff possible. And generally it's the stuff that determines whether or not you're going to win.
Right.
We looked at the point that even though barely 30% of Americans are qualified, basic qualification for military service, that you can put your feet on the yellow footprints and go take the next step beyond that. Everybody who comes off that thing can contribute positively. There are very few. I put the question to one of our expert witnesses in a hearing. So which occupational specialties don't contribute to the mission of the force? Yeah. I know John wouldn't like to be outside the wire without having functioning comms. I know I don't want to go off the front end of an aircraft carrier with a jet that's not ready to go and it's going to fall off when I go. There isn't anybody who stepped on those footprints that couldn't contribute some function that supports those things to be mission ready and to be mission execution capable. So we looked at it from that realm, and we looked at why certain folks don't know about the military. It goes back to education again, and don't understand it.
Yeah. Understanding, sure. Although it brings up an interesting point. Secretary Hagel earlier today was talking about public perception of the military being still very, very high favorability in the military. So whether or not the public actually understands that when they say that is up for debate, depending on who we're talking about, I guess. But I want to pivot a little bit to sort of the other prong that we haven't talked about yet, which is public service. As a former federal government employee, I certainly know that net favorability for that group is probably a lot lower than it should be, given what I experienced. But what was the commission's approach? And I know, John, you were on the national service side, but I'm sure that as you were putting things together, you had some observations and experiences. What was maybe the biggest surprise or the biggest sort of piece of public service that you learned and that you kind of latched onto as a commission, and what in that area where was the focus? And that's for either of you, whoever wants to start.
Well, I'll start, and let Shawn definitely finish up. My colleague Brian Collins really did an amazing job in kind of digging in deep to all kind of issues public service. It was by far kind of dominates the recommendation section of the Inspire to Serve final report. And I can say, not talk to it from a policy, but kind of going through the process and learning all I did. Just the amount of kind of obstacles to get hired, even to fill lower ranking, E6, E7 positions, seemed overly competitive. The questionnaire, the exam seemed overly impossible. You almost had to lie to give yourself a chance. It was almost self-defeating, and so many dead ends that you kind of run into. There was a chart where you can run into so many dead ends before. You have like 7 different points of getting rejected until you make it to the end for even just consideration. So that was absolutely surprising. And like I said, a lot of these hiring preferences just kind of did not materialize to be what they were originally expected to do, which were to help certain groups of people, certainly, get priority access, but in a lot of ways, it just really jammed the system. And, like I said, I definitely followed and supported my colleague, Brian. And I know he had a lot of big recommendations. A lot of them were very tangible. Fix this is broken. But some of it was kind of attitudinal. How do you fix stuff that, how do you fix a lot of corporate culture and stuff like that? So some of the stuff we were able to speak to in the report, but doesn't necessarily have an accompanying recommendation with it. But I'm glad that we worked with some great organizations, Partnership for Public Service, who were able to kind of give us access to their members and decades of research as well, and they were good partners with us. So at the end of it, we came up with some pretty strong, kind of comprehensive recommendations for the public service sector.
Shawn, anything to add?
Certainly, thank you. You mentioned how the military is one of the most appreciated institutions in America. It polls really high, and there's a pretty big gap between the military and the next highest institutions. And government employees, federal government, and others rate really low. People who run for office often choose to make hay and use public employees as whipping posts. And it works in the sense that they have engendered very negative feelings in the average American for public employees. I come from a family, my father was a police officer, multiple aunts and uncles and cousins who are public school teachers or have been teachers, as well as first responders, EMTs, and firefighters. I have a great appreciation in that sense for public employees at all levels. But I also remember in my personal experience after working in the Pentagon as an appointee and going over to lead an office at the Department of Transportation, I was intimidated in a sense because I was going from my happy place the world I had been in for over 30 years of the Department of Defense, whether it be in uniform out in the Pentagon. And now I was going to this civilian agency and going to lead civil servants who probably were most likely not veterans. And I was like, ooh, how's that going to go? And when I showed up to leave my shop and we got to know each other the first couple of days, I'm like, they're here to bring it like anybody I knew brought it in the Pentagon because they're dedicated American public servants. And we saw that play out. And for me, my sense of mission and what it takes to get a job done dovetailed completely with theirs. Completely. There was no signal loss. There was no misunderstanding in that way. And it was a great learning point, a single learning point that opened me up for what we discovered as we went around the country. And we made a point in most of our stops. We went to 14 states, all 9 census regions around the United States, visited big cities, smaller towns, places that you'd call rural or not so urban. And we made a point to talk to as many different kinds of federal employees as we could in different places. In one stop, we went to the large federal campus outside of Denver, where multiple agencies have their Western hubs and Western headquarters. And we talked to a bunch of folks would normally call back office types of things in accounting and payroll and those types of functions. And as we're talking about these folks and why they joined public service, what they got out of it, and we asked, what are some of your what are the things that keep you in this job? What do you like about it? And a woman made a statement that just struck me right in my core. She said, I do travel claims. I did, and this was, I believe we were in 2018, we were talking to him, and the wildfires are pretty bad this year, and the 2017 wildfires have been really bad as well in the West. And she said, last year I was doing travel claims for all the federal firefighters who were surged to all these things. And federal firefighting is a life or death mission. Whether you're a smoke jumper or you're going up there with your shovel and doing that stuff, that's for real. She said, I wanted to make sure that those people had no doubt that all of their pay, all of their administrative stuff, because they were on this surge deployment, was all taken care of, and that they would never think twice about any of that stuff, and that their families were being taken care of while they went. I was a part of that team. And I just basically went touchdown, because that's exactly what I had to do as a squadron department head on an aircraft carrier, where I had the administrative department in my squadron. You know, people think aircraft carriers, that's cool jets on the top of an aircraft carrier going off and landing with rock music in the background. It's all those people underneath, not just the people who turn the wrenches, but who make sure the sailors get paid, make sure their records are right. The corpsmen that make sure they're, and the dental technicians that make sure they're healthy and ready to go up on the roof and do that stuff. And I had to work on that to make sure that they all remembered and assured that they felt they were on the same team. And I saw that exact thing with these federal employees in Denver. And I'm like, they get it. The American people need to know that. That affected all of us who were in that room, is that people who have that kind of mission sense are not whipping posts, and they're not a suck on your tax dollars. They're exactly who you want, doing exactly what you want, helping people save lives. They're part of that extended team in that way. And that loops back again to education. If you don't know your branches of government, if you don't know the functions of government, if you don't know how tax dollars are supposed to be spent in response to you being an active voter, hopefully, you can see that connection. I used to get my biggest applause lines when I would speak at public administration events with people who serve at government levels from all over the country, and the National Council of State Legislators. I spoke at one of their events, and I would say, I felt my job as a service member. People thank me for that. I accept those thanks. I got paid, and it was fun. But also, I've come to understand we're part of a larger social contract. We're not just defending America because, hopefully we're defending and protecting America so that America can be its best self and has that space and doesn't have to worry about it there. I like to come home from deployments to find the roads paved, the water clean, the foods and medicines safe, not worried about, like in the Department of Transportation. If it wasn't for the Department of Transportation, I don't know that I'd get on Metro as often as I used to do. It's keeping those, that's what government does for us. And I just feel like my military service was a part of that. Right. Yeah, it's a little bit different because it's a lot riskier than most endeavors, but not all. And that we're all part of a big team in that way at all these different levels. And public servants need to be acknowledged for what it is they do, often for their entire professional lives. So that was a lot of things. And that's why we put some harsh words or serious words that are affecting our report. It's like, hey, you got to stop beating on these people, because they're the ones that make all this stuff go. And that includes our military. Military, you don't get anywhere with the uniformed logisticians. You don't get anything without the civilian people either. If they disappear, the whole thing grinds to a halt. So it's about understanding to generate an appropriate level of appreciation for what makes it all go.
Right. So as we kind of start to wrap up, the commission officially sunset earlier this month, like you said, just a matter of weeks ago. And there's still access to the report out there, and we will make sure to link to the report and the executive summary in the comments of this so that folks can read it, which you absolutely should spend some time looking at the recommendations. But what is next for the recommendations? Kind of what are the next steps? I'll start with Shawn and then move to John, because John, you're working on some of this too. Uh-oh, mute.
Sorry, it's a reflex. I was turning my mic off. A lot of the work we did was built upon the work of others over the course of decades and recent years. Advocacy organizations, John mentioned the Partnership for Public Service. There were all the Service Year Alliance and America's Service Commissions, these advocacy organizations, and as well as serious academic organizations like the National Academy for Public Administration that's chartered by Congress to look at the hard problems and offer solutions. We took from all those places and then, as I said, try to stitch that together. Those organizations came back to us of their own accord as we finished up our final report, wanted to understand it. We had long talks about it with them in different fora, and they're going back out themselves. Well, I think one of the most important things that we're able to accomplish is introduce a lot of those groups to each other in a way, because generally there's the good government groups and there's the military service organizations and there's the public sector unions and there's the national service people, and they don't always come together. But we were fortunate and able to facilitate introductions, and they've all agreed on some areas where they have overlap or common cause where they're going to look to advance their issues wherever they can in that way. So, and that was our goal, is to put something out that people can go back to as a touchstone, hopefully.
Yeah, Shawn, talk to me a little bit about kind of how you're taking your work on the commission into your next adventure.
Yeah, like I said, going to the commission, I had already, I was bringing with me a lot of the initiatives that we were working on, especially with the DoD when I was at CNCS, so in a lot of ways, going to the commission allowed me to kind of continue on some of those initiatives, and kind of really explore them a little bit deeper. So I mean, through this time, a total maybe 4 years altogether, I kind of built up a really intimate attachment to some of these policy issues, especially with national service, especially at the convergence of military and national service, where they can be mutually supportive of each other. We identified several key areas where they could be mutually supportive, and recruitment and marketing. CNCS's budget is this big, and the DoD's is this big, but they're essentially recruiting the same population in a lot of ways. So how can we get them to work together on transition? There could be a lot of cross service. Service begets service. Transitioning military veterans who miss that core mission, one of the first things, the most immediate things that they miss is a sense of duty, where they can transition to a national service position, give them some buffer time to reintegrate with their community, still give them a good mission to follow through on, utilize their leadership in that. So, after leaving the commission in January, I was trying my hardest to say, how can I still further these things? There's so many good ideas across, not just with national service, but with the civics organizations, with the public service reform. I mean, how can I really stay involved? And, my all directions in a lot of ways were pointing to the Hill. So I reached out, to a lot of organizations to try to, I applied a lot of, to a lot of Capitol Hill offices, but since I'm a mid-career, had zero Hill experience prior, none of them would even look at my resume. So thankful for HillVets who helped me get a position. But yeah, so luckily, I was able to work out and coordinate a position with Jimmy Panetta's office, who is the congressman who took the Inspire to Serve Act. So we not only did the commission produce a final report, we also have a whole piece of legislation that we gave to Congress saying, here's all our recommendations in one singular act. Go forth and pass and make the law.
It's
totally. So I ended up.
Right?
I'm sorry.
It's totally that easy, right?
Totally that easy. Oh man, so definitely started work on there and realized that the legislative calendar was short this year because of COVID. They were out. We were promised. The commission was promised hearings with an Armed Services Committee, but they didn't happen because nothing happened. So now I'm continuing to work in his office. We're looking at plans to try to tee something up for maybe the first 100 days. If there's a switch of administrations or the new Congress, we're looking at the tolerance of how much do we want to keep this bill as a one singular piece bill, or can we start breaking it down? I provided a strategy that took the whole Inspire to Serve and made it a series of 4 or 5 little kind of subsets of the recommendations. So it'd be the Inspire for Civics, and Inspire for all Americans to Serve, Inspire for joint collaboration on service, so make things that are a little bit more singular committee based as opposed to 13 committee based. but might have a chance to pass as an individual kind of bill with groupings and, versus a larger kind of more expensive ones. So we're looking through, there's, this legislative session is essentially kind of shot in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of hope and a lot of, hopefully there's a lot of opportunity for next legislative session. But I tell you, some of the things in there did not make it up and end up in the Inspire to Serve Act, but they've all been vetted. They could be handled by interagency collaboration with each other. CNCS and the DoD could form some of these collaborations organically just by pointing to our report, which gives them the flack they need, the cover they need to work together on some of these initiatives. So I'm looking through the report to see, well, which one of these can be, maybe a letter to a secretary encouraging them of this collaboration that the commissioners worked so hard to vet. Maybe they're, and so but like Shawn said, that's kind of the Hill and the legislative part. We made some great partners, though. Like she said, the Service Year Alliance, that can carry this mission forward. And that was the whole intent. Once the report was released, it was building the coalitions to carry it forward. So it's going to take a team effort. It's going to take a village. Not one single commissioner or congressman or organization can do it alone. But it's a worthwhile endeavor. If you read this, I think it should be mandatory reading for every high school class. Every high school senior or something should be briefed on just some of the values that the commission put forth, and the kind of value that they've attached to service, and some of the testimonies of how service has impacted communities, individuals, nonprofit organizations, and overall how it's impacted, some of the most significant challenges that America faces. So, yeah. Very proud to continue the fight as far as possible, but it'll exceed longer than a fellowship and a commission. It will go on, into the next administration and further.
Well, I'm fired up just talking to you all for less than an hour. So I hope this is only the first of many conversations that we can facilitate about service in our country. Obviously, service is at the heart of everything that we do at HillVets, and so this is a very meaningful report, I think, for our whole community. Before we let you go to enjoy your evening, is there any one particular brief nugget that you would want our audience, the public, to know about the report, about the commission, about the recommendations going forward?
I'd just like to say, I think the appreciation has got to change in the country, that every type of service, helping your neighbors, helping your community, whether it's your church, school, your company, a civic organization, whether it's national service, public service of whatever type, or military service, it's all service. If you help your neighbor, you're helping America. I think I can't be more adamant about that proposition. It's where we all can.
I love it. John?
Yeah, just to pick up on that, service is ubiquitous. If we look around every day, in our average drive, in our commute to work, the people we work with, we'll see service taking place on every street corner, in every city, in every job. Doesn't have to be, the civil service. Service is happening all around us every day, and it's important that we recognize it. It's important that we aspire others to do that. Recognize that what that janitor is doing is simply not picking up trash, but they're beautifying. They're keeping the community sanitary. It's a greater meaning of service. It's not simply for profit or for self-enrichment, although it is very enriching. So I would say the audience, pick out a lane of service. I was taught never to end a conference without a call to service. So I challenged the HillVets lead proteges to pick your line of service and to go after it with gusto and with pride and get after it, because there is a lot of work that needs to be done still in many areas of our society and our government and our community. So pick a lane and be a leader and get after it. And that would be my call to service to end with.
There is no better way to end. So Shawn and John, thank you so much for your time. Again, I hope we can continue the conversation. And like I said, we will link to the report in our social media for all of this. Thank you for joining us. Have a great one.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. So it has been a long day. There's been a lot of interesting conversations, and we are going to wrap it up with a very special guest. It is Justin Brown, the founder of HillVets, the CEO of the Nimitz Group, joining us from the great state of Utah. Hi, Justin.
Hey, how are you all doing? Good to be here. And what an inspiring day full of so many incredible panels. I'm so proud of everything that all of our incredible proteges have done. And Betty just took off on me, so I guess it's just me and me alone. But that's fine. I'm up for it. Just what a real honor to now see our fourth class of HillVets lead proteges. We put this incredible program together for really one purpose, and that was to help our veterans who are involved in policy and government continue to grow, continue to move up the ladder in Washington, D.C. to keep doing next things. The goal in the back of our heads was, how do we help create the next Chuck Hagels of the world? And so to have Chuck Hagel with us, who's been instrumental in our success, to have incredible folks involved in this leadership program from the beginning, including Admiral John Kirby, Secretary Deborah James. We've had Bob Woodward involved, Ranking Member Phil Rowe, Connor Lamb, all of these incredible politicians, media figures, veterans, non-veterans alike. It's just so incredible to see the community come around and try to help veterans who already got incredible backgrounds. They've already done the hard work, really they have. And now they're just really sharpening their swords. Maybe not that aggressive, but they're trying to really take their game to the next level to continue doing great things for our nation. So just incredibly pleased. I watched all the panels. I learned something from all of them, and great job to Betty and Jenna. I'm last on this event, but this is really the first big HillVets event that I've actually not really done anything. So really appreciate, Betty and Jenna and their leadership, and Abigail, who's been super involved in this class of HillVets lead proteges, as well as previous classes. She really likes this program. So really thankful to her. All the folks who've made this possible, I've already mentioned some of them, some others I haven't. Ken Falk, who's been super involved. Some of our panelists today who've always been helpful and supportive of HillVets. And I know I'm going to miss names here, but, Leo Shane, the most decorated HillVets awardee out there. An honor to have him multiple times today. Lauren Katzenberg of the New York Times. She's always been helpful in support of what we're doing. And lastly, I think I'll just leave with a note for our audience and our lead proteges. And that is, this is the first time we're doing this event, obviously online. It's kind of fun in some ways. There are definitely some positives, honestly, but there are certainly, huge drawbacks. I mean, it's really great to be able to come together and see each other and listen to people speak and be able to network after and those types of things. But obviously 2020 has been a crazy year, and it's been a crazy year of working to, in many ways, it's forced you to be resilient. It's forced you to be innovative. And so, embrace those things. On the negative side, it's also forced like this constant anxiety, don't know what's going to happen, don't know what's next, kind of this slow grinding of halting things. It's been really hard on veterans who are looking to get placed into positions. It's been really hard on veterans who've lost employment. So, that on top of all of the other things that are happening. I mean, I'm in the West right now. It's on fire. We had earthquakes out here. We've got record, climate crisis type things going on, and a very contentious election. We have protests across the country. Our country already has so much going on. Don't be the gasoline to those solutions. We've already got enough gasoline out there. Be the bridge, be kind, be the model citizens that, America needs right now. And, I think in some ways, the Chuck Hagels of the world exemplify that, where they've had huge knockdown fights with, fellow veterans of both parties. They've been through some of the country's biggest challenges in their eras. But at the end of this, they all stuck together. They looked at that North Star, they pointed at that North Star, and they've worked to build a collaborative country in America. Never has our country felt, to me, so divisive. So let's all try to be a little bit better. Let's all be the bridge. Let's all be veterans and families of veterans and friends of veterans before we are a Democrat or a Republican. Let's be super careful of how we're reading into social media and some of the stuff that's being shared on there. Let's make sure we're all getting good facts and information. And, I think every day, take it one day at a time. And if you are interested in some of the HillVets offerings that we have out there, we have some incredible programs. Our leadership program, we have our HillVets House Fellowship program. So it's all right down there. Look at that magic. Pops up right on the screen. Please check us out. And, I know Betty's working really hard to already create some sense of normalcy, whatever the new normal is. And then I think the last, not to jump all over the place here, but, there seems to be a new slogan that's emerging this year. And I kind of disagree with it. So I'm just going to be vocal about it. I've never been too scared about being vocal about things. But it's not okay to not be okay. If you're not okay, you need to find help, and you need to work on you and becoming your best you. So, if you're not okay, if you are struggling, that is understandable this year. We've all struggled in some way. Reach out to, some peers, some folks that you feel care about you. There are great programs out there. And so if you're feeling down, you're feeling out because of this year, definitely find those resources. But really proud of all of our incredible proteges, really proud of the HillVets team, really thankful to all of our incredible sponsors who could have done the easy thing this year. They really could have. They could have just blamed COVID and ran left or right. Our incredible sponsors chose not to do that. So Cerner, DAV, and the rest of our sponsors, we greatly appreciate you. So, Betty, did I miss anything?
No, you're great. We just appreciate you joining us, and we appreciate everyone who joined us today. And we hope that you learned as much as we did from our speakers. And we're just really grateful for our community and for all the support that you give us. So thanks so much.
All right. Well, thank you all. And that is CAPCON 4. And John Lira, I see you sticking around. Always inspiring. Keep up the great work. All of our proteges, I apologize. I didn't list all of you, but congrats. And we're looking to see you do big things. And you're going to be even better alumni than you were program folks. So we'll see you soon.
That's right. That's a wrap. Thanks, everybody.